Good morning. I'm sitting.
You're sitting.
Yeah, you can't make me not.
So, this has been a real journey this last month since we've known that she's going to be here and sharing today. Because this is normally my spot up here, and her spot is out there, so we're going to switch today. And
you'll appreciate your pastor much more after today. I will, for sure. So I tried a number of times to get out of this, actually just like 4 days ago. I was like, no, you can do it. No, I can't. You can. So a couple months ago, when he was preparing for this parenting series, we were sitting on the front porch talking about different aspects of it, and we get on the role of the mother, and so we're talking about different ideas we have with that and everything. And then he goes, well, why don't you just share this part? And I'm like, no, why do I have to share that? I'm not a preacher. And then right away, as soon as I thought that, like no sooner did that word come out of my mouth, I thought about Moses and how God wanted him to go talk to Pharaoh, and he chickened out. And he probably lost some blessings because of that. So I thought, okay, I need to learn. So I reluctantly agreed. And then that night at dinner, he announces to the kids that Mom's preaching in October. No, I'm not preaching. I am not preaching. Just in case you want to know, I am not preaching. I'm sharing a message. It's different. And I said, aren't you going to do this with me and be up here? Oh, no, you'll be fine. Okay. So I went to work. I got in the Word. I was studying what it looks like to be a godly mother. And as I'm doing that, I'm comparing my own life to this. And I'm like, well, I'm not measuring up. I mess up every day. I'm not who I need to be. I have a lot to work on. I said, oh, that's how I get out of doing this. So I gave it a couple days, and I'm like, Johnny, I'm not qualified to do this because I mess up all the time, and I always have to ask the kids to forgive me, and I don't do this perfectly. I don't have this down pat. And he goes, well, do you think I'm qualified to preach every Sunday? I'm like, well, I live with him. I know he's not perfect. Just in case you're wondering, he does sin every so often. So what I learned through the first part of this is that, the saying, God doesn't, I always get this mixed up. God doesn't call the equipped, he equips the called. Amen. So whether you like it or not, sometimes you're called and you have to do things you don't want to. So here we are. All right. So if you've been paying attention at all to this series, you know that Johnny's been using Galatians 5 as our goal in parenting. Is that on there? There it is. Okay. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Against such things there is no law. Those who belong to Christ Jesus have crucified the flesh with its passions and desires. Since we live by the Spirit, let us keep in step with the Spirit. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about is tenderness. Tenderness, defined by Webster, is gentleness and kindness, and some synonyms would be kind-heartedness, soft-heartedness, and softness. Another definition says feelings of deep affection and devotion. Some of those synonyms would be fondness, love, loving-kindness, emotion, and sentiment. It's pretty safe to say that most women are more tender than men. Even the most dominant of women are usually more tender-hearted than their male counterparts. Even the way that we communicate with one another, we make noises. Like if we're talking to another woman, we're like, oh, really? Like we always want to give this verbal feedback to let the other person know we're listening. Well, I get none of that from my husband. The other night I was talking to him, and I paused to have him respond, and it was a... He fell asleep, and I just laughed. I'm like, oh my goodness, I should know by now. Don't talk to him in bed. So us girls just communicate differently, and that's okay. That's how we're made. Men tend to be on the little rougher side, most men. You can argue with that if you want to. So, for example, the first time I saw Johnny and Jerry eat a whole chicken, I'm sure many of you have heard this story. There was nothing left but a pile of little shiny bones and greasy faces, and they were so happy. And I thought, how could anybody conduct themselves in such a ridiculous manner? But put a lobster in front of me, and I'm worse than them, I think. So like the way he does dishes, it's just a little barbaric to me. I mean, it's so rough, and like he goes after it wholeheartedly, and it gets clean, but whew, I can't. It's hard to watch. We're just different. That's how God made us, and that's okay. So God gave us women this unique ability to feel so deeply and compassionately towards people, and especially our children. More often towards our children. So an interesting thing happens when a woman becomes a mother. Not just a child is born, but a mother bear is also born. And I didn't know the love I would have for another human being as deeply as I would my own children. I didn't know I'd be so angry at my own children either. This instinct is born in us when we have a child, and we just have this drive to protect our young. So I discovered that when I became a mom. And then I also discovered rather quickly, I have this nasty, selfish nature inside of me too that is screaming to only please itself. I remember holding my newborn baby, looking at that precious little thing and going, oh my goodness, they're so perfect, they'll never do any wrong. 3 sleepless nights later, I'm like, just sleep for 3 hours, please, come on, what's wrong with you? They're starting to control your life, and you're just like, what am I doing? How do I do this? I can't even function anymore because I can't think. So when I became a mom, lots of things had to change for me, and I didn't even know. Sleep was one. I don't think I ever woke up in the middle of the night before I had kids, so I don't know what that was like. Then there's the whole eating thing, like, oh, I have to feed you. I hated cooking. I was just okay with eating out. I just, grab a snack here or there. I was not one to be in the kitchen. So I have this little human being depending on me, and for some reason, my value for finances changed when I had a kid too. I'm like, well, I better not eat out too much because, it costs money. And it's maybe not as healthy. So, okay, we better eat in, and I better start learning how to cook. So I started learning how to cook baby food. Start from the beginning. I had to change so many different things. And so far, the biggest lesson that I learned was that I need to give up what I wanted. It wasn't about me anymore. It was about the family. The desires that I had, that I thought didn't even realize they were selfish. It took a 180. I had to go the other way. So for myself, that meant coming home from work after our 3rd child, and I realized working at home is far more difficult than working outside the home. For those of you who do work outside the home, I get that too. I think the difference is you're always on. When you're at home 24/7, you can't clock out, you can't go home, you're always on. And the stress of that is sometimes very difficult. So I remember one time I was feeding Mila. We have 3 kids, and they're all born within 3 years, so we were crazy for a while. But so I'm feeding Mila as a baby, and the boys are laughing, getting into something, and I go and look, and they're in my closet, and they have everything that was hung up piled on the floor just in this huge heap. And I lost it. I was like a little kid threw a temper tantrum. It's so embarrassing. I can't even believe I share this with you. It was so embarrassing. But I realized inside of me there's this nasty thing that needs to be dealt with. And I was mad because they're not tall enough to hang the stuff back up, so I can't make them do it. I had to do it. And I'm tired, and I'm all sorts of stressed. So I had a lot of stuff to learn with how to put boundaries on myself and boundaries on my kids. I feel like we kind of grew up together, me and the kids. But I remember as a young girl thinking, when I grow up, I want to be a mom, a wife and a mom. Like that's I think what God has called me to. And He blessed me with that, and I was able to be that. But then once I did, not too long after I was that, in that role, I began questioning it, and I started devaluing that role. I would go, maybe I should be pursuing a career. What's the big deal with having to keep up with the house and cooking and laundry? And playing with, a babysitter could do that. So for years, there was a battle there that I had to fight with, is this the right thing to do for our family? I'm not saying for everybody. And there's different seasons for it. I worked when we had the boys, and then I came home later. So there's different seasons for it. So for our family, it just made sense for that to fit for me to come home. But the longer I go, the more and more I'm convinced that relationships take time. And if we want to have a good relationship with our children, we have to spend time with them. Whether that means you're intentional, if you work outside the home, you're just more intentional about it. But I realize even if I'm at home, I can still not be there. I can be talking to them and be with them all day long, but not really be there. So it doesn't really matter if you're at home or not. You can just check out if you want to. So we always have to be aware of that. All right, so when it comes to this tender mother and this, in our eyes, rough father, how do we balance that out? What does that look like? So the first one, I think, is to give up control. And let's face it, moms, that's hard to do. Us mother bear in us, that mother bear, it just doesn't want to let go. It doesn't even matter that it's the husband, our husband, and the father of our children. We want to protect that child from everything. And if the goal of parenting is to lead them to Christ, then we have to teach them how to submit to Him, and that first happens with learning how to submit to Dad or another father figure if there's no dad in the picture. So if you can't submit to God if you can't first submit to man. So us moms, we have to step out. We can be a part of it, but we can't interfere with it. If we look at Galatians 5:25, that last line of what I read earlier, it says, "Since we live by the Spirit, let us keep in step with the Spirit." So if you call yourself a believer and you're going to say that, you probably should be walking it. So that probably means shut up when your husband's disciplining the kids. Well, it's hard, but it has to happen. You cannot interfere with what God has ordained in that relationship. There's so much that can be. I can't tell you how many times I wanted to jump, and I haven't always done it right. I have stepped in over my boundaries at times when I thought he was too hard on them. But they have the best relationship with him, and I think they can run over me better because I don't stand up to him as much. But they have the best relationship with their dad because of that. And so it doesn't hurt them, it makes them better. So be careful of that. A great story in Scripture, you're going to want to go home and read this, is 1 Samuel 1. It's the story of Hannah and her son Samuel. Before she gave birth to Samuel, she was barren for many years. And verse 6 says that the Lord had closed her womb. So if you're watching in that Scripture, God has a plan here, and it's not said, well, it kind of is if you're paying attention. But in Hannah's eyes, she doesn't know this. She doesn't know that God closed her womb for such a time as this. So Hannah's deeply wounded in her infertility, and one day she made a vow to God. In verse 11, she says, "Lord Almighty, if you will only look on your servant's misery and remember me, and not forget your servant, but give her a son, then I will give him to the Lord for all the days of his life, and no razor will ever be used on his head." Okay, that's an intense promise. How many times have we made promises and got what we wanted and then, oh, never mind, thank you, I'll just forget about it. That's intense. So she has her son, and just to give some background information, they're Jewish. The Jewish people were required once a year to go up to the temple and make sacrifices and worship. And after she had Samuel, she told her husband that I'm going to wait this year, I'm not going to go, but I'll go when he's weaned. And that was about 3 years old. Verse 22, it says, Hannah did not go. She said to her husband, "After the boy is weaned, I will take him and present him before the Lord, and he will live there always." 3 years old. Jump down to verse 26, and it says, "Pardon me, my Lord, as surely as you live, I am the woman who stood here beside you praying to the Lord. I prayed for this child, and the Lord has granted me what I asked of him. So now I give him to the Lord. For his whole life he will be given over to the Lord." Okay, that is drastically keeping your word in that promise. None of us are going to have to go give our 3-year-old up to some priest and have him raise him. None of us will have to do that. None of us will have to do something near as drastic as what Hannah did. but I think we can learn a lot from it. She gave up complete control there, and the least we can do is allow our husbands or a father figure to step into that role as well, and to allow them to have some of that control. But just because she gave up control does not mean she gave up influence. In verse 19, it says, each year his mother made him a little robe and took it to him when she went up with her husband to offer the annual sacrifice. How do you envision that meeting going? Once a year she sees him, and so he's 4 by now, and she sees him and she made this little robe for him, and I don't even know how big my kids are going to be in 6 months, let alone a year. Like, how do you figure that? It's probably a little long, grow into it. But, I mean, just that detail that she went through, and I guarantee you she prayed for him every day. She didn't see him but once a year, but I bet she prayed for him every day. And there was probably tons of tears shed when she left and questioned why maybe she did that. It doesn't say that, but I would assume that happened. So that then leads into my second point, and that is to leave and cleave. So one of the outcomes of good parenting is to release the child to begin their life. And just because you give up control, like I said, it does not mean that you're going to give up influence in your child's life. So just some practical ideas on equipping your children when they are young and through the teenage years, whenever they're the age that they're in your home. 4 different things. So the first one is spiritually. Are you teaching them how to mine the truth from God's word? Can you teach them how to apply it? Like this isn't just for them. This is up in the ante for us too. We have to get serious about our faith too if we're going to want our children to be as well. Give them an example of what family devotions looks like. Maybe you should start doing that if you're not. Be consistent somehow. Get consistent with what fits your family and your rhythm, and stick to that. For us, it's been off and on. I mean, we would go maybe a couple months with a specific time that we read, scripture we read, and then life happens, we have sports, we have school, whatever, work, I mean, you name it, something will interrupt you. And then you just have to find a different rhythm. And then there's dry times where we don't done anything except for pray at bedtime. We are good at that. So you have to just figure out what fits for you. And don't let it beat you. You have to figure it out and make it work. Just fight it. It's a struggle. The enemy's there. He doesn't want you to do it, but you have to figure it out. It's big in the life of your kids, and it brings consistency, and they like that. Model to them your own personal time with God. Are they seeing you in the Word? Are you in the Word? You know, you have to be showing it to them so that they can then model it after you. Physically speaking, teach them how to take care of themselves. Like showering once a week is like terrible at our house. Like, I have to shower again. I showered last week. So, the struggle's real. Teach them proper hygiene. You know, it's important. Teach them the importance of a healthy body and healthy eating. Teach them how to work physically and mentally hard. Get out there and work with them. Don't just go say, clean your room. Maybe go help them clean their room. Don't do it for them, but go alongside them and go with them. Teach them how to work hard. Financially, and this can come from mother or father, teach them how to say no to themselves. Can you say no to yourself? Do you buy them whatever they want? Do you buy yourself whatever you want? Teach them how to save. Delayed gratification is huge, especially in this world when you have Amazon and you can get it the next day. It's so nice, but such a necessary evil. You know, it can get us in so much trouble. Generosity, this is a big one. Teach them how to tithe, but then also teach them how to see people who are in need. See, God doesn't bless us with money just for our own sake and for our own enjoyment. He gave us money to sometimes be a blessing to others. And if there's someone in your life or who you find out about who is struggling, you probably should rethink how you're spending your money on you. So teach your kids how to do that with them. Social and home life, teach them how to balance their time and not be lazy. Are you being lazy? They're watching our every move. You have to be the example all the time. One day they'll all be out of our house and we can cheat a little, but it's rough. But it's so important, and it's worth it. It's totally worth it because we need that too. Teach them how to do their own laundry. My kids all have to learn how to do their own laundry at 10 years old. I'm out. I'm like, you know what? Once you can reach that washer, I'm done. Is it pretty? No. Do they do it once a week in this huge pile of laundry? Yep. Do they get it put away right away? Nope. Do I get mine put away? Nope. Truth be told, I got after the boys one day for their messy room. There's clothes on the dresser, and I go downstairs and look at my room. I'm like, what am I saying? My room is probably worse than theirs. And they didn't call me out. They should have, but. So, you got to give up control in the laundry. Teach them how to run a vacuum and mop and clean a toilet. If they're going to pee on the floor, tell them to clean up the pee on the floor. And then teach them that they're an important part of the family, that they are needed, that they are wanted, and that they belong there, and they have roles that they need to play and tasks that they need to do that are helpful to the whole family. So they can kind of see it as a whole. If we raise children to be adults who are well-balanced, they will be a blessing to their spouse. What woman doesn't want their husband helping with the housework? Maybe not, but it's the thought. And what man doesn't want his wife, getting dirty on the farm or under whatever you do, under the hood of a car, whatever. There's companionship there that is huge in a marriage. So we can start now, teach them that now. Okay, so the goal is to teach them how to have the fruits of the Spirit and to cleave to God before they leave home and cleave to a spouse. So that needs to be the number one goal. So my final point, number 3, is don't take yourself too seriously. So one day, a couple years ago, probably about 5 years ago now, I was grocery shopping with the kids. I told them I wouldn't. They wanted me to tell this story, and I said, no, you have to wait so you're listening. So I was at E&S, and if you go shopping with young children, it is not for the faint of heart. Every week I would go shopping, and every week I'd be like, I am never taking you out again. And the next week, here I am, pulling into the grocery store with all my rules. Don't run away, don't ask for things. Oh, I'm such a mess. So one day we were at E&S, and they're pretty young. And I'm the mom who you don't want to get behind in the line because I have the humongous cart, and it's going to take forever to check out. So we are in line, and I'm just putting my stuff on, and I don't know who it was. One of the kids goes, Mom, I got to go to the bathroom. It's like, oh, no. I don't want to get out of line. E&S was crazy busy that day. I didn't want to have to deal with the people and get back in line. I said, can you just hold it? Yeah, I think I can hold it. Okay, hold it. And so I'm like rushing the girl, trying to get her to go faster. I'm like, you okay? Yeah, I'm okay. Okay. So I'm like, when a kid has to go to the bathroom, you're like, that's your main focus, especially when you're outside and outside the home and they don't wear pull-ups anymore. You're like, whew, it's an emergency. So we get our groceries bought, everything, and if you've been to E&S, you know that they have 2 sets of bathrooms. One is you can get to it from the outside. The other one, you can get to it from the inside, but there's an outside entrance next to the bathroom. So I wanted to go to the closer one, and that was the one from the inside, but there was a whole bunch of people down that aisle. So I was like, okay, I can go out this door, and I can go back in the other door that's next to the bathroom. So we head that way, and out of the corner of my eye, I noticed someone's following me. Like some Amish guy is following me, and my 3 kids, young kids. And I think at this point there had been some grocery store abductions around here or something. So I'm hypersensitive about that stuff. And I'm like, this dude is following, but I can't let this kid wet their pants. So I better make it to the bathroom quick. So we get to the bathroom, everyone goes, no wet pants. And I'm thinking, what am I going to do if that guy's out there? So I opened the door, and there he was, standing there, E&S has carry out still. The boys, the bag boys, take your groceries to your car. I ran this guy around. He was probably thinking, who is this crazy lady? Why are we going back in the store? Oh. And they had the ice cream bar at the time, and that's probably why I went to E&S to shop, so I could get ice cream and threaten the kids if they're not good, they don't get any. So I feel like such an idiot. He's probably like, this is a weirdo, some weirdo. So we took the groceries to the car, and then we got our ice cream. So anyway, all that to say, don't take yourself too seriously. Laugh at yourself. Your kids are going to know. They're going to see right through you. So don't pretend that you are somebody you're not. Apologize to your children. I can't count how many times I've had to do that. It's humbling. It's hard to do, but it's very necessary. And if I go back to where I was before when I started all of this, I have to remember that being a godly mother is not being a perfect mom. I think the wisest thing that we can do is be a mom who's humble and willing to ask for forgiveness and receive God's grace. So, let me read our Galatians passage one last time, and then we're done. Whew. All right, Galatians 5:22 through 25. If you haven't memorized this yet, you probably should. Work on it. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, I like patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Against such things there is no law. Those who belong to Christ Jesus have crucified the flesh with its passions and desires. Since we live by the Spirit, let us keep in step with the Spirit.
I have a question for you.
No,
You
not
wanna
done?
answer a question?
Oh, dear.
This is
This is on
impromptu.
the spot.
I did not tell her I was going to ask her a question.
This is scarier.
Just for the record, I do not remember that we weren't done with the conversation when I went to sleep. I mean, I do not remember her saying anything.
I didn't get mad at you like I normally would.
Yeah.
I laughed. Normally I would be like, he's so mean.
I don't remember anything, so hey.
No, you don't.
All right. So we talk much about this transforming journey that basically guts you of your selfishness and as the Father begins to build in you these fruits of the Spirit. By His power, He helps you to kind of live this out. What are the greatest joys in parenting for you as a mom?
Ooh. Probably seeing your children living out what you're trying to teach them, and you don't think it's sinking in. We have some friends who they live in such a way that they fully depend on God. They work part-time jobs simply so they can be available to people. Why are you going to do this to me? And so they struggle. Like they depend fully on God to provide for them. And the last time we were with them, the struggle's real. It's hard. It's been hard, probably never been harder. And I'm always talking to the kids about giving to people and being thankful for what we have. And I said something about Christmas presents this year. Maybe we should give to somebody else, not get any. And one of my kids, I won't call him out, had $100 that she earned. Sorry, that she had earned. She can work with her dad. And she said, I want to give this to them. That's a lot of money for a 10-year-old. It's a lot of money for a 40-year-old. I didn't get my dog's haircut at the groomer because I didn't want to spend $32, and I thought, well, maybe I can give that money to them. So I give them a terrible haircut. But she said, so I'm trying to model this, and she said, well, I want to give that money to them out of the blue. I wasn't prompting it, nothing. It was totally up to her to say that. And I thought, oh my goodness, like, that's it. Like, that's what we're trying to go for. And in that moment was, we ought to send that money now. We haven't yet. We need to. But that's one of the greatest joys, I think, is seeing them bloom from when we were teaching them.
It is through this parenting series, and Heather talked about this in the beginning, and I saw this light go on in her eyes, and when I told her, I said, and my exact words were when she was trying to get out of sharing with you guys, which I was not going to let her off the hook because I knew it was the
When
right
you're
thing.
married to the pastor,
Yeah.
you got him and God against you.
She was
I
some
was
kind
so
of stuck.
stuck. I
Yeah, she was some kind of stuck. But my words to her were, do you really think I'm qualified to get up and preach God's holy word every week and having lived it and having, I mean, none of us are there. And so this is the acceptance of God's role for us with this certain kind of grace. And I think it's become clear to both of us as we have walked through this series, is that there's just so much grace that we need from God to be good moms and dads. And it's also never to underestimate the power of these roles. God has ordained these roles of moms and dads to have this kind of permeating effect through all of society. And it is not to be underestimated. And it costs us. It should impact every other area of your life. If you're going to be a mom or a dad and you plan to not allow that shape who you are and change where you're going, you're going to have a rough time of it. Because I think the kids, like you said, they need to be fed and clothed and on. They'll bludgeon you into submission as an unwilling parent. So it's easier just to go willingly.
Just give up.
Yeah, just give up and say, Jesus, we need your grace, and to do that very well. All right. Do you have anything else to share before we
No.
close the curtain on all
do.
this? Did you do a great job? We will be back next week, same time, same place. God bless y'all real good.